Well, the recent heavy rainfall was much needed, but it was a bit too much for some areas. Chris Wickham sent along photos of the flooding in Chalfont, and you can just see how much mud and water there was. Highway 6 actually closed for a time over the weekend before the California Highway Patrol began escorting traffic, but the highway north out of Bishop was reopened Sunday night at about 5:30. Also, flooding problems once again in areas near Death Valley. Looks like 127 closed again this afternoon. And making the national news has been that huge mudslide that closed Highway 58 between Mojave and Tehachapi. Now the good news, Caltrans spokesperson Florine Trainer told Sierra Wave Media this afternoon that all of the cars that were stranded in the mudslide have now been removed. Trainer said Caltrans is still in the process of removing mud and is also working on drainage issues. Now there is still standing water, Trainer said, and Caltrans is clearing drains and working to make Highway 58 safe for travel again. Now Caltrans has been clearing mud debris and vehicles from State Route 58 between Mojave and Tehachapi due to a flash flood that occurred last Thursday. Mud flowed from the surrounding mountains onto State Route 58 at approximately 4:30 p.m. Highway closed to through traffic at 6:30 due to the amount of mud and vehicles that were engulfed by the mud. Now it was discovered, according to a press release from Caltrans, that approximately 1.5 miles of roadway was covered in 5 to 6 feet of mud. 78 passenger vehicles, 2 buses, 36 trucks, 1 RV, and 1 trailer were stuck in the mud. Emergency personnel were able to safely remove all travelers and move them to emergency shelters. Good news, there have been no injuries or fatalities. Now, as of today, Florine Trainer of Caltrans told the Los Angeles Times that the last of the some 200 cars that were abandoned on the highway Thursday afternoon cleared about 1:30 Monday morning. About 20 miles of the highway between State Routes 14 and 202 are still closed to traffic, though only a fraction of that is damaged, Trainer said. 1 big rig and about a half a dozen cars were removed from the mud and debris covering a long stretch of highway from exit 165 to Cameron Canyon Road. Trainer told the LA Times. Loaders and excavators are digging up the dirt, covering the highway and carting it away to 2 different sites. Now on Sunday, Caltrans had 52 employees on site, with 11 loaders, 5 graders, 14 dump trucks, an excavator, and a fuel truck. There were also 4 engineers and 2 geologists assessing the damage. Granite Construction has been hired to assist with the excavations and mud removal. Granite Construction has 27 employees with 9 loaders, 2 dozers, 3 excavators, a scrapper, 1 Pettibone forklift, and 33 to 60 end dump haulers. State Route 58 will remain closed to the traveling public and until all of the mud has been cleared and the roadway repaired. It is estimated at this time that State Route 58 will reopen by this Thursday. The traveling public should avoid this section of highway and plan an alternate route. Well, David Woodruff, a new contributor to Sierra Wave Media, filed this following story. This past Saturday, the Carson and Colorado Railway held its 5th annual barbecue fundraiser. Took place at the American Legion Hall in Independence. The event, huge success, with a standing room only crowd of over 140 people turning out to show their support and to enjoy a tri-tip dinner cooked trash can style. Carson and Colorado Railway is an all-volunteer 501c3 nonprofit group dedicated to the restoration and eventual operation of Southern Pacific Narrow Gauge Locomotive Number 18 as a living reminder of the proud history of independence and southern Inyo County. Locomotive 18 is also known affectionately as the Slim Princess. Now, the restoration project got its official start in 2010 when volunteers from the Owens Valley and several steam locomotive organizations throughout the West came together to begin the process of putting locomotive number 18, which had been on display at Dayhe Park in Independence since the 1950s, back to operational order. Now, board president Dave Moll updated the attendees with the current status of the restoration project. Moll spoke of how a milestone was recently achieved on August 21st with the firing up of the boiler and bringing number 18 under steam for the first time since 1954. Moll said, quote, "Everything went exactly as planned with no issues or problems whatsoever. We brought the engine up to 157 psi, and although we still have plenty of work ahead to fully complete the restoration, we are past one of the biggest hurdles. The number 18 can now once again be classified amongst the living steam locomotives of the world." Moll went on to say that work on the restoration would continue with a planned completion date sometime next year. Moll then spoke as to, even though work on the Slim Princess is in its final stages, another new project is now needing to get started, and that is the construction of a railroad barn to house the Owens Valley landmark once restoration is complete. Now, plans are to move the restored Slim Princess from Dayhe Park to the Eastern California Museum, where it will be on display. The railroad barn will help keep the engine out of the elements and protect it from deterioration. Carson and Colorado Group plans to place 1,500 feet of track at the museum and bring the restored locomotive out to run on special occasions. Now, according to Moll, the railroad barn will cost in the neighborhood of $120,000 to $160,000. Moll said, quote, "We have about $40,000 for the construction of the barn. The community has already been very generous with their support in the restoration of Engine 18. We are hopeful the community and our supporters will help us in securing the balance of the funds needed to complete this project with the construction of the railroad barn," end quote. Now, the Carson and Colorado's Vice President Randy Babcock then spoke to the crowd how the restoration project has been completely funded with private money and that no government money has been spent. Babcock pointed out that many of the volunteers that work on the restoration come from all over the West and pay their own expenses to do so. Babcock himself is from the Durango and Silverton Railroad in Colorado and makes several trips a year to Independence to help work on the Slim Princess. Also noting the delicious tri-tip meal was accompanied by a raffle with some great items, and including a couple of railroad ties from the original Owens Valley rail line. Moll concluded the evening by thanking the crowd and reminding everyone of the important difference individuals and groups can make in small communities such as Independence and the Owens Valley. Moll pointed out that if it weren't for the hard work and efforts of longtime Owens Valley residents OK and Anna Kelly, the Slim Princess would have ended up on the scrap heap instead of being brought to Dayhe Park in Independence back in 1954. During their lives, the Kellys were instrumental in effecting a number of improvements that benefited their community in the Owens Valley. Now, for more information on the Carson and Colorado Railway and their restoration project, you can visit their website at carsoncolorado.com. We thank David Woodruff for that piece. Well, Mammoth Lakes Recreation has announced an interim funding cycle for awarding funding from Measure R and Measure U for 2016 special events and event programming. Now, that interim funding cycle will be limited in scope and amount and will serve to support special events and event programming for the 2016 calendar year. The town of Mammoth Lakes directed Mammoth Lakes Recreation to prepare and provide a strategy and prioritized list of primary amenities recommended to be supported with Measure R and U funds by December of this year. The MLR strategy will address the process for future funding scenarios. Now, due to the timing of the finalization of the strategy, this interim funding cycle has been created. The 2016 Mammoth Lakes Recreation funding cycle application process and form of press release notes is similar to the previous interim funding cycle. However, the timeline is condensed with a goal to allocate funds for special events and event programming prior to the end of the year. Application period opened today and closes November 6th. Mammoth Lakes Recreation Allocation Committee will meet November 9th to review applications, and the Mammoth Lakes Recreation Board of Directors will host a special public meeting November 16th to finalize a recommendation to the Mammoth Lakes Town Council. The scope, instructions, and application can be found on the homepage of the Town of Mammoth Lakes website, townofmamothlakes.ca.gov. We'll be back with more news.